Lucille Ball once lifted the curtain on Hollywood's darkest secrets, exposing 9 actresses she believed were truly evil. For more than 2 decades, she reigned supreme as America's favorite redhead, her infectious laugh and rubber-faced comedy lighting up living rooms across the nation. But behind the lovable Lucy persona was a steely-eyed powerhouse, the first woman to run a major studio and the most feared dealmaker in town. She wasn't just making people laugh, she was shaping destinies. According to a former Desilu executive, Lucy had no patience for cruelty or phoniness. In private, she kept a mental blacklist of actresses she described as souls of pure frost. Publicly adored and impeccably glamorous, these women, Ball insisted, hid monstrous behavior behind their polished smiles. In her later years, Lucy began sharing chilling stories about the stars she secretly despised. Stories that painted a shocking portrait of Hollywood's golden idols as predators in silk gowns. One tale stood out, a legendary screen queen who projected dignity on camera but once unleashed such vicious verbal abuse on a young wardrobe assistant that the girl abandoned the industry forever. Another beloved TV star, Lucy warned, was far more dangerous than any man in Hollywood because her sugary on-screen image gave perfect cover to what Ball called a lifetime of calculated destruction. These weren't just temperamental divas or high-maintenance stars. To Lucy, they were something darker, calculating manipulators the industry protected for decades. And at the top of her secret list was one actress she despised more than any other. A private confrontation with this so-called Ice Queen confirmed every suspicion Lucy ever had about the sinister side of Hollywood fame. Number 1. Joan Crawford, the Hollywood queen with ice in her veins. When Joan Crawford appeared on Here's Lucy in 1971, audiences expected to see the elegant star they'd adored for decades. With her flawless posture, immaculate wardrobe, and carefully polished charm, she seemed every inch the embodiment of old Hollywood glamour. But behind the cameras, that illusion quickly cracked. According to those who worked on the set, Crawford was nothing like the gracious icon she projected. She was one of the coldest people I've ever met, Lucille Ball later confided to her longtime hairdresser. Like talking to a beautiful statue with nothing inside. All she had was glamour. Underneath, nothing but ice. The trouble began even before Crawford arrived. She sent a 5-page list of demands to the technical team, dictating everything from the angle of her chair to the precise studio temperature. Exactly 68 degrees, not 67, not 69. When she finally appeared, hours before taping, she brought her own makeup crew despite the show employing award-winning artists. Every detail had to be on her terms. What stunned the crew most, however, was the way Crawford treated people according to their status. She practically bowed to Lucy, one stagehand recalled. But when a young wardrobe assistant accidentally brought her a dress with the faintest wrinkle, Joan exploded. Witnesses say Crawford unleashed a tirade so cruel it left the 22-year-old assistant in tears, calling her a useless little nothing and suggesting she find work cleaning toilets where standards wouldn't matter. Crawford even demanded the girl be fired. Once the cameras rolled, it was as if a switch had flipped. Crawford transformed into the perfect Hollywood queen, every laugh rehearsed, every spontaneous smile calculated. During breaks, she froze into silence, staring straight ahead like a mannequin, then instantly reanimated the moment the red light blinked on. She was like a machine pretending to be human, one producer said. Even Ball, famed for her warmth with crews, was visibly unsettled. Afterward, she quipped to co-star Gail Gordon, "I've performed with department store mannequins that had more genuine emotion." Years later, when Christina Crawford's mommy dearest exposed Joan's alleged abuse of her adopted children, Lucille Ball wasn't shocked. Friends recalled her quietly nodding and saying, "I believe every word. I saw who she really was in those few hours." For Ball, Crawford's cold calculation was chilling enough. But the next star she would clash with was something even more disturbing, a brilliant talent destroyed by their own self-destruction. Number 2. Judy Garland, the brilliant star who left wreckage behind. It may feel almost blasphemous to include Judy Garland on this list. After all, she remains one of Hollywood's most adored icons, a fragile soul crushed beneath the merciless weight of the studio system. Even Lucille Ball publicly praised Judy's extraordinary gifts, calling her one of the finest performers the world had ever known. But privately, Lucy's feelings were far more complicated. According to those closest to her, she admired Garland's genius but refused to excuse the trail of chaos her behavior left behind. Lucy adored Judy's talent, recalled one longtime friend. But she was brutally honest about how Judy's addictions and unreliability ruined careers and hurt innocent people. Lucy always said, "Talent doesn't give you the right to destroy other people's livelihoods." The two women had known each other since their early days at MGM, their paths crossing repeatedly throughout their careers. Where Ball was celebrated for ironclad professionalism, Garland gained notoriety for the opposite, arriving hours late, missing appearances, or showing up too impaired to work. What infuriated Ball wasn't Judy's personal demons, but the collateral damage they caused. Crew members waited endless hours, producers lost fortunes, and struggling co-stars watched their own opportunities vanish when projects collapsed. One former television director remembered Lucy telling him about visiting a set in the 1970s. The crew had been on call since 5 a.m. Garland finally arrived at 2 p.m., dazzled for half an hour, then declared herself too exhausted to continue. The production lost an entire day, and the next morning, 3 crew members were fired to cut costs. Lucy said the worst part wasn't Judy's tantrum, the director explained. It was watching hard-working people lose their jobs because of it. For Ball, this was deeply personal. She had clawed her way from B-movies and radio, surviving Hollywood's brutal rejections through sheer reliability and grit. To her, wasting such immense talent through self-sabotage wasn't just tragic, it was almost criminal. As she once put it privately, Judy was always late, always a mess, and someone always got fired for it. People kept making excuses because when she showed up, she was magic. But the body count was real. When Garland died in 1969, Ball mourned her publicly as a lost treasure. But behind closed doors, she called Judy's life a cautionary tale, proof that addiction doesn't just destroy the addict, it devastates everyone around them. Lucy's compassion for Judy never erased her conviction that responsibility matters, even for the brightest stars. And while Garland embodied talent wasted by self-destruction, Ball's next adversary represented something she found just as dangerous: calculated insincerity, wrapped in a facade of European sophistication. Number 3. Zsa Zsa Gabor, phony elegance on 2 legs. With her dazzling gowns, heavy Hungarian accent, and flirtatious charm, Zsa Zsa Gabor was a staple of talk shows throughout the 1960s and 70s. To audiences, she was a glamorous, over-the-top socialite who joked about her endless marriages and European mystique. But to Lucille Ball, she was something else entirely. What Lucy once scathingly called phony elegance on 2 legs. Lucy hated fakes, and she thought Zsa Zsa was the fakest of them all, revealed a writer who worked closely with Ball. She used to joke that Zsa Zsa's accent got thicker or thinner depending on how much attention she wanted. Nothing about her was real, not her hair, not her diamonds, not even her name. Ball's disdain wasn't just professional rivalry. It came from years of watching Gabor up close. At a charity gala in the late 60s, witnesses recalled Gabor sweeping and draped in furs and dripping in jewels, purring for photographers. But the second the flashbulbs dimmed, her smile vanished. She snapped at volunteers, demanded special treatment, and whined about wasting her night at such a boring event. Lucy saw the whole performance, one attendee remembered. She watched Zsa Zsa charm the press, then turn around and treat the workers like servants. After that, Lucy said, that woman isn't just playing a role, she's living a lie. What infuriated Ball most was the message Gabor's act sent to Hollywood. At a time when women fought to be taken seriously as professionals, Gabor leaned into every stereotype, marrying rich men, flaunting wealth, and trading on exotic allure. Ball, who had built her empire on talent and tireless work, resented that Zsa Zsa built hers on batting her eyelashes. And in 1989, long after Ball's death, Lucy's instincts seemed vindicated. Gabor made headlines when she slapped a Beverly Hills police officer, proof that the entitled diva act wasn't just a show. It was who she really was. But as much as Zsa Zsa's calculated facade irritated Lucy, the next star on her blacklist struck her as far worse. Not a fake, but a true talent destroyed by uncontrolled rage. Number 4. Bette Davis, talent fueled by cruelty. Bette Davis was undeniably one of Hollywood's greatest actresses, a force whose career spanned decades and helped define American cinema. Her screen presence was legendary, fiery, commanding, unforgettable. But according to those close to Lucille Ball, the real Bette Davis off-camera was even more intense, and not in a flattering way. Lucy admired Betty's genius enormously, recalled a longtime friend of Ball's. But she used to say Davis could melt film with her glare, and the only thing bigger than her talent was her cruelty. The two titans crossed paths more than once, but their most notorious encounter came during an industry dinner in the mid-1960s. Witnesses say Davis spent the evening belittling waiters, interrupting speakers, and tossing barbed insults at absent colleagues. When Ball was invited to join Davis's table, she declined with a cutting quip, "I'd rather keep my skin intact tonight." What disturbed Lucy most wasn't just Davis's sharp tongue, it was how she used it as a weapon against the powerless. She gained a reputation for ripping into makeup artists, costume designers, and young actors, sometimes leaving them in tears, sometimes demanding they be fired. A former studio employee remembered one incident when a nervous young actress stumbled over a single word. Davis publicly shredded her for 5 minutes, sneering, "Did you learn to read in a reformatory?" Ball was so appalled she complained directly to the director. In Lucy's eyes, Davis's behavior was especially inexcusable because it came from someone who actually was brilliant. Lesser talents often compensated with oversized egos, but Davis had the real gift, and that made her cruelty sting even more. As Ball often said, when you reach the top, you have a responsibility to be better, not worse. Despite her private disdain, Ball never denied Davis's brilliance. She even participated in a television special honoring women in entertainment where Davis was featured, though she reportedly insisted they never be paired together. "It wasn't that Lucy was afraid of her," her friend explained. "She just refused to waste time with someone who found joy in making others miserable, no matter how talented they were." To Lucy, Davis stood as a troubling contradiction, dazzling talent poisoned by cruelty. And if Davis embodied destruction through sharpness, the next Hollywood legend Ball struggled with would embody something just as chilling, an icy detachment, even from family. Number 5. Barbara Stanwyck, the Ice Queen who walked away from her own son. Barbara Stanwyck remains one of Hollywood's most respected legends, a 4-time Oscar nominee celebrated for her versatility, fierce professionalism, and no-nonsense screen presence. Whether in smoky film noir or rugged westerns, she embodied women of iron will. But according to those who knew her best, the coldness wasn't just an act. It was Barbara herself. Lucille Ball, who briefly worked with Stanwyck during the early days of Desilu Productions, reportedly found her terrifying. "Barbara's like a statue you'd never dare touch, perfect, polished, and completely cold," a former Desilu executive recalled Lucy saying. Ball was an actress who pulled from raw emotion, but Stanwyck treated acting like a switch, crying on cue one moment, then casually asking about lunch the second the director yelled cut. To Lucy, it felt almost inhuman, like watching someone play at being a person rather than living it. What truly cemented Ball's uneasy opinion, however, wasn't Stanwyck's craft, it was her role as a mother. In 1932, Stanwyck and her husband adopted a boy named Dion. After the marriage ended, Barbara raised him alone, but as Dion grew older their bond fractured. By most accounts, she eventually severed contact with him entirely. For Lucy, a devoted mother who worked hard to co-parent even after her divorce from Desi Arnaz, this was unthinkable. "Whatever problems you have with your kids, they're still your kids," she often said. Walking away isn't an option. Ball saw Stanwyck's decision as evidence of something deeply broken inside her. "She plays strong women, but off-screen she left people in tears, including her own family," Lucy reportedly confided after running into Barbara at an industry event in the 1970s. Stanwyck may have been Hollywood's Ice Queen, commanding the screen with unmatched force, but behind that flawless exterior lay a chilling emptiness that haunted even her peers. And for Lucille Ball, who believed family came before everything, that cold detachment was more disturbing than any performance Barbara ever gave. Would you like me to give this a slightly more Scandal magazine style, with sharper hooks for YouTube storytelling, the shocking truth, the dark side, the secret that haunted Hollywood, or keep it in a more classic documentary tone like above? Number 6. Tallulah Bankhead, unmanageable and dangerous. Tallulah Bankhead was one of the most unforgettable personalities of 20th century entertainment, a flamboyant actress with a booming voice, unapologetic sexuality, and a talent for shocking audiences both on and off stage. Her razor-sharp wit and outrageous behavior made her a sensation to fans who loved her boundary-pushing style. But behind the curtain, Tallulah's antics weren't just colorful, they were reckless, disruptive, and sometimes downright dangerous. Lucille Ball learned this the hard way when Bankhead guest-starred on the Lucy Desi Comedy Hour in 1957. What should have been a simple, glamorous appearance quickly spiraled into chaos. According to crew members, Tallulah showed up intoxicated, stumbling through rehearsals, unable to remember her lines, and launching into crude improvisations that no 1950s family program could possibly air. She'd suddenly start cursing or tossing in sexual innuendos mid-scene, recalled one production assistant. This was the 50s. You couldn't get away with that. The censors would have had heart attacks. But her foul language was just the beginning. On set, Bankhead's physical behavior became unpredictable and alarming. She wandered off in the middle of scenes, vanished to her dressing room for unexplained breaks, and startled her fellow actors with unscripted physical contact. The breaking point came when she nearly toppled an expensive camera during one of her chaotic episodes. Producers branded her unmanageable and dangerous, while Lucy herself was furious. "Never again," she reportedly told Desi Arnaz. Working with Tallulah was like trying to choreograph a hurricane, impossible and destined for disaster. The real sting for Ball wasn't just Tallulah's behavior, but how it drained the entire production. Crew members worked overtime to patch together her erratic performances, actors struggled to stay in character, and the whole project risked going over budget. For Lucy, who built Desilu on professionalism and respect for the craft, Bankhead embodied everything she despised, raw talent wasted on self-indulgence. And as bad as Tallulah's chaos was, the next celebrity Lucy clashed with would prove even more troubling, because instead of mischief, they brought outright violence to the stage. Number 7. Shelley Winters. A Storm in a Dress. Shelley Winters was the very definition of contradiction. In the 1940s, she dazzled as a blonde bombshell, the kind of starlet Hollywood adored. But as time went on, she reinvented herself, transforming into a powerhouse character actress who won not one, but 2 Academy Awards. Her talent was undeniable, her legacy cemented. Yet off-camera, Winters became notorious for something very different: her volcanic temper. "She was a storm in a dress," recalled one writer who worked with Lucille Ball in the 1970s. "You never knew if you were going to get calm waters or a Category 5 hurricane." The stories that followed made that description hard to deny. At a Hollywood fundraiser in the late 60s, Winters reportedly flew into a rage after feeling slighted by the organizers. Witnesses say she screamed at staff, hurled a drink, and caused such chaos that several guests simply walked out. Ball, seated nearby, leaned to her companion and whispered dryly, "And that's why I said no when they asked me to sit with Shell." But her public tirades were only half the story. Behind the scenes, Winters's fury was even more cutting. According to multiple accounts, she once drenched a Desilu executive in his own meeting for daring to suggest a minor script change. One moment they were talking about a scene, a producer recalled. The next, the poor man was wearing her cocktail. Lucy was livid, not just at the insult, but at the deliberate humiliation in front of his team. What disturbed Ball most was that Shelley's explosions didn't always feel impulsive. They often seemed strategic. Observers noticed that Winters's meltdowns usually happened when she wasn't getting her way, or when she wasn't getting enough attention. Lucy had a theory. Shelley had figured out early on that if she created enough chaos, people would cave just to silence the storm. And for Ball, manipulation, especially that kind, was unforgivable. Still, Lucy kept it professional. She appeared at the same events, shared the same Hollywood orbit, but always with distance. Friends said her rule was simple: "I make sure there's always someone sitting between us." If Winters's emotional volatility unnerved Lucy, her next adversary would strike an even deeper nerve. This one didn't rely on tantrums. This one wielded cruelty with a smile, wrapped in the disguise of sultry sophistication. Number 8. Ava Gardner, beauty with a savage streak. Hollywood worshipped her as sultry. Lucille Ball, however, saw her as savage. Ava Gardner wasn't just beautiful, she was devastating. With her exotic looks and smoldering presence, she became a global sex symbol in Hollywood's golden age. Her fiery romances with men like Frank Sinatra and Howard Hughes only deepened her aura of danger and allure. But behind the shimmering facade, Lucy believed, lived a woman capable of astonishing cruelty. Lucy thought Ava was one of the meanest people in Hollywood, a longtime friend of Ball's once confessed. Ava doesn't just burn bridges, she dances on the ashes and laughs while they're still smoldering. Those words weren't born of rumor, but of experience. During their years at MGM and beyond, Ball saw Gardner belittle assistants, humiliate makeup artists, and berate wardrobe staff until they cried. One story still haunted a former employee: Ava reducing a young wardrobe girl to tears over a dress that had been steamed too much. "Don't bother," Ava sneered. "You can't fix incompetence with more incompetence." Lucy, disgusted, later comforted the girl in her own dressing room. What hardened Ball's opinion was an incident in the mid-1960s. At an industry gathering, Gardner allegedly called Lucy a washed-up clown, loud enough for others to hear, maybe even hoping it would sting. But Lucy wasn't shaken by the insult. Her success spoke for itself. What enraged her was the sheer casual cruelty, the way Ava seemed to wound people simply because she could. To Lucy, Ava's beauty was both her weapon and her curse. The industry excused her behavior because of it. "If Ava had been born plain, she'd have had to develop a personality," Ball once told a friend. Instead, she never needed to be kind, considerate, or even interesting. After decades of being worshipped for her looks, Lucy believed Ava had lost the ability to be any of those things. For Ball, Gardner's dazzling exterior masked something darker, an ugly spirit that no camera could ever hide. But Ava wasn't the only thorn in Lucy's side. Her final, and perhaps most shocking nemesis, was far closer to home, her very own co-star. Number 9. Vivien Vance. The friendship that survived the scars. Vivien Vance might be the most surprising name on Lucille Ball's enemies list. After all, Ball and Vance would later share one of the deepest friendships in television history, a bond that lasted until Vance's death in 1979. On screen, their characters Lucy Ricardo and Ethel Mertz gave audiences one of the most beloved female friendships ever captured on film. But behind the laughter, the early years of their real-life relationship were anything but warm. Those who worked closely with the pair described their beginnings as hostile, marred by jealousy, insecurity, and bitter clashes that sometimes exploded into screaming matches. "The friendship was real," one writer from I Love Lucy later confessed, "but so were the wounds. They fought like sisters, meaning they fought dirty, and they knew exactly how to hurt each other." The trouble began almost the moment Vance was cast. At 42, only 2 years older than Lucille, she was asked to play Ethel, a frumpy sidekick meant to appear much older than Lucy. Ball feared Vance was too attractive for the part, leading to the infamous contractual clause requiring Vance to stay overweight for the run of the show. "Vivien was humiliated," recalled a close friend. She'd finally gotten her big break, only to be told, "You need to look less attractive, or you're out." It was a cruel way to start any partnership. But the tension didn't run one way. Vance could be just as sharp-tongued. She often complained about Ball's controlling nature, reportedly referring to her as that tough old broad. One confrontation became legendary. Furious that Ball had stolen the spotlight during one of her rare showcase moments, Vance stormed into Lucy's dressing room and accused her of scene stealing. "You're jealous, you're controlling, and you're old," she shouted. Lucy fired back, reminding Vivien that she should be grateful to even have a job. It was an ugly exchange, and one of many. And yet, unlike the other feuds on Ball's list, this story didn't end in bitterness. Over time, something shifted. As the years passed and I Love Lucy cemented itself in history, grudging respect gave way to genuine affection. Ball came to appreciate Vance's wit and loyalty, while Vance realized that Lucy's perfectionism wasn't about ego, it was about excellence. By the 1970s, the two had forged a sisterhood built on trust and resilience. When Vance died of bone cancer in 1979, Lucille Ball was devastated. She had lost not just a co-star, but the woman who had stood by her through her divorce and her darkest hours. Yes, Lucy never forgot the insults, being called controlling, jealous, and old. But she also never forgot that Vivien was there when others in Hollywood turned away. Their friendship was messy, painful, and scarred by wounds. But it was also real. And in Hollywood, where most relationships are paper-thin illusions, that made it priceless.